The corroded iron ceiling of Draven Kale's makeshift workshop dripped condensation onto the dismantled gravity stabilizer before him, each drop landing with a soft hiss against the overheated metal components. Outside, the perpetual industrial smog of Ortacitus Colony dimmed the already feeble light of Jar 9's distant sun. Draven wiped sweat from his brow, leaving another streak of machine oil across his weathered face. At 32, he looked a decade older. Life on the mining colonies aged a person faster than Earth years. His calloused hands worked methodically, fingers nimble despite their roughness, as he coaxed the stabilizer's core back to life. "Come on, you stubborn piece of junk," he muttered, adjusting the crystalline power node. The stabilizer hummed, vibrated, then emitted the steady blue glow that signaled functionality. Finally, a successful repair meant credits. Credits meant another month in his cramped quarters. Another month of surviving on the fringes of Caraxus Empire space. Another month of avoiding attention. The workshop's door slid open with a metallic groan. Ravik, a stocky man with cybernetic eye implants that glowed amber in the dim light, stepped inside. His long coat, pockets bulging with contraband tech components, swayed as he moved. "Got your precision torque adjuster working," Draven said, not looking up. "Microfracture in the calibration joint. Fixed now." "Always the miracle worker," Ravik replied, tossing a small pouch that landed with a metallic clink on the workbench. "Your payment, plus a little extra for the quick turnaround." Draven nodded, still focused on reassembling the stabilizer's outer casing. "Any news worth knowing?" Ravik's cybernetic eyes whirred as they adjusted focus. "Another purification ceremony tomorrow. Number 314. His voice dropped. "Word is, they've caught something special this time." Draven's hands stilled momentarily before continuing their work. The monthly xenopurification ceremonies were the Empire's way of maintaining control. Public displays designed to remind everyone of the consequences of harboring or helping non-humans, especially the Valix. "Not my business," Draven said flatly. "Mandatory attendance, as always." Ravik moved closer, lowering his voice further despite the signal jammers Draven kept running around the clock. "They're saying it's a pure-blood Valix this time. Female. Supposedly caught trying to infiltrate the administration complex." The small tool in Draven's hand slipped, cutting into his thumb. A drop of blood welled up, startlingly red against the gray metal. "Pure Valix? Thought they were extinct in this sector." "Apparently not." Ravik's expression was unreadable. "Steel Square, noon tomorrow. Don't be late, they're scanning citizen IDs." After Ravik left, Draven sat alone in the silence of his workshop, the completed stabilizer forgotten on the bench. The Caraxus Empire had colonized Jar 9 nearly a century ago, establishing mining operations that stripped the planet of its valuable resources. The native Valix had resisted initially, but their numbers had dwindled through systematic extermination, disguised as security operations. Now, in 2387, seeing a pure Valix was like spotting a ghost, a remnant of a nearly erased people. Draven closed his shop early, retreating to his apartment in the residential sector. The 8x10 living space was sparse: a sleep pod, a kitchenette, and a single chair facing the window overlooking the industrial sprawl. He pulled a bottle of synthetic whiskey from beneath his bed and poured a finger's worth into a chipped glass. As he drank, memories he'd long suppressed threatened to surface, fragments of another life, before he'd become just another nameless mechanic in a forgotten colony. Memories of a father who had taught him that courage meant standing up when everyone else remained seated, of a mother whose violet eyes had seemed to peer into souls. Violet eyes, like the Valix. Draven drained his glass and shoved the thoughts away. That was all ancient history now. His parents were long dead, their ideals buried with them. He had survived by keeping his head down, by becoming invisible. Tomorrow, He would attend the ceremony as required. He would stand in the crowd, eyes averted like everyone else. He would endure the propaganda, the demonstration of empire power, and then he would return to his workshop and continue existing, just as he had done for the past 15 years. Morning arrived with the automated city announcements blaring through the public address system. Mandatory attendance, ceremony 314, Steel Square, midday. Failure to comply will result in citizenship review. Draven joined the stream of workers, trudging toward the colony's central plaza. Steel Square had earned its name honestly. A massive open area, surrounded by towering metal structures. The ground itself covered in polished steel plates that reflected the harsh industrial lights. At the center stood a raised platform where the ceremonies always took place. Security was tighter than usual. Empire troops in their distinctive black armor scanned IDs and conducted random biometric checks. Draven kept his expression neutral as a scanner passed over his face, comparing his features to his identification records. The device beeped acceptance, and he was waved through. The square filled quickly with thousands of colonists. No one spoke above a whisper. Children were kept at home during purification ceremonies. This was adult business, the shaping of proper imperial citizens through demonstration of consequences. Precisely at noon, the massive screens around the square flickered to life with the imperial emblem, a stylized star being crushed by a gauntleted fist. The crowd fell silent as Commander Rael stepped onto the platform, tall and imposing in his ceremonial uniform, with medals gleaming on his chest. He radiated authority and menace in equal measure. Citizens of Ortacitus, his amplified voice boomed across the square. Today, we gather to witness justice, to reaffirm our commitment to genetic purity and imperial security. The standard propaganda followed, the threat of alien influence, the danger of genetic contamination, the Empire's benevolent protection. Draven had heard it all before. He kept his gaze down, counting the minutes until he could leave. Today's subject represents a particular threat, Rael continued. A pure-blood Valix infiltrator, captured attempting to access sensitive Imperial communications. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Pure Valix were rare enough to be mythical. Most colonists had only seen hybrids, humans with traces of Valix ancestry, identifiable by subtle purple tinting of the skin or eyes. Bring forth the subject, Rael commanded. 4 guards marched onto the platform, surrounding a slender figure. Draven's eyes lifted involuntarily. She was unmistakably Valix. Delicate features set in lavender skin that shimmered with an almost luminescent quality. Hair, like spun amethyst, fell in waves past her shoulders. But it was her eyes that captured Draven's attention. Large, expressive, and deep violet, with no whites or pupils, just swirling gradients of purple that seemed to contain galaxies. Those eyes scanned the crowd with neither fear nor submission. When they passed over Draven, he felt a jolt, as though a circuit had completed inside him. The Valix woman stood at the center of the platform, her hands bound before her. But most disturbing was what they had done to her legs. From mid-thigh down, they were encased in a dull gray material that Draven recognized as neural reactive concrete, a specialized compound developed for securing particularly dangerous prisoners. The concrete anchored her to the platform, immobilizing her completely. This subject, designated Nereus, was apprehended 3 days ago, Rael announced. As per Protocol 87, she has been secured using neurally bonded restraint medium. The concrete responds to emotional states. Any attempt at escape, any surge of hostile intent, causes the medium to contract and harden further. Draven watched as Nereus stood perfectly still, her face a mask of composure, despite what must have been excruciating discomfort. The neural reactive concrete was notorious for its cruelty. It essentially punished prisoners for feeling fear or anger by causing increasing pain. Witness now the consequences of infiltration, Rail continued. Over the next 72 hours, this subject will remain here, in full view, as the restraint medium gradually completes its integration. At the conclusion, the subject will be fully incorporated into the platform, a permanent monument to imperial justice. Horror dawned on Draven as he understood the full implication. They weren't just restraining her. They were going to leave her there to be slowly, irreversibly merged with the structure. It wasn't execution. It was transformation into a living statue, conscious, but eternally immobilized. As if sensing his realization, Nereus's gaze found him again in the crowd. This time, he was certain. There was recognition there, an impossible familiarity, and beneath that, a silent plea. "Help me!" The words whispered through his mind, though her lips hadn't moved. Draven flinched, breaking eye contact. Around him, the ceremony continued, with Rael detailing the specific crimes alleged against the prisoner and the technical specifications of the neural reactive concrete. But Draven barely heard him. His heart hammered against his ribs as an unwelcome thought took shape. He could help her. The thought was madness. Absolute suicide. The Empire didn't show mercy to traitors, especially those who interfered with purification ceremonies. He would be executed, or worse, subjected to the same fate as the Valix woman. Yet, as the ceremony concluded and the crowd began to disperse, Draven found himself lingering, circling the perimeter of the square, observing the security protocols. 6 guards remained stationed around the platform. Surveillance drones hovered overhead. The concrete around Nereus's legs had already begun to change texture, tiny, crystalline structures forming on its surface as it responded to her emotional state. Draven returned to his workshop, mind racing. He pulled open drawers, examining tools and components with new purpose. If the concrete was neural reactive, it could theoretically be disrupted with the right combination of electrical impulses and chemical agents. He had repaired similar systems in mining equipment. The principles weren't entirely different. By evening, he had assembled a crude but potentially effective device, a modified plasma cutter combined with a neural feedback loop that might, if he was very lucky, destabilize the concrete enough to free Nereus without triggering its defensive mechanisms. "You've finally lost your mind," he muttered to himself as he concealed the device inside a maintenance toolkit. Completely, irreversibly insane. Night had fallen over the colony when Draven made his way back to Steel Square. The industrial sector never truly slept. Machinery continued to hum, and workers on night shifts moved through the streets. But the administrative areas grew quiet after dark. Security remained tight around the square. But Draven had spent years learning how to move unnoticed through Or Tacitus. He approached from the maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the colony, emerging through a service hatch in an alley adjacent to the square. From there, he could see the illuminated platform where Nereus remained, still standing impossibly straight, despite what must have been hours of pain. The guards were positioned at regular intervals, alert but static. Draven took a deep breath and activated the small electronic device he'd brought, a signal disruptor that would create a momentary blind spot in the surveillance system. It wouldn't last long, maybe 30 seconds, but it might be enough. The moment the nearest drone wavered in its flight pattern, Draven moved, keeping to the shadows. He skirted the edge of the square, using the massive structural columns for cover. Years of navigating cramped engine compartments had made him surprisingly agile for a man his size. 20 seconds. He reached the base of the platform, crouching below the line of sight of the nearest guard. 10 seconds. Using a maintenance worker's access code he'd cloned years ago for less noble purposes, he unlocked the service panel beneath the platform. 5 seconds. Draven slipped inside, just as the signal disruptor failed. Heart pounding, he found himself in the cramped maintenance space beneath the platform, a maze of support structures and control systems that regulated the square's various functions. Above him, Separated by mere centimeters of metal flooring, stood Nereus. Through the gaps in the platform, he could see the concrete encasing her legs, glowing faintly with the neural reactive components. From this angle, he could also see what wasn't visible from the crowd: thin filaments extending from the concrete, beginning to work their way upward along her body. The integration had already begun. Draven removed his device from the toolkit and carefully positioned it against the underside of the platform, directly beneath where Nereus stood. As he activated it, he felt, rather than heard, a subtle vibration. "Can you hear me?" he whispered, hoping his voice would carry through the metal. "I'm going to try to help you, but you need to remain absolutely calm. The concrete reacts to emotional spikes." For a moment, there was no response. Then, so faintly he almost missed it, a voice whispered back, "I hear you." Her voice carried an ethereal quality, like wind through crystal. Draven swallowed hard, focusing on the task at hand rather than the impossibility of what he was attempting. "This device should disrupt the neural bonding," he explained quietly. "But it needs time to work. Can you maintain emotional neutrality, even through pain?" "I have been trained in the Valix disciplines," came the soft reply. "But the concrete is invasive. It feeds on fear, creates it to sustain itself." Draven nodded, though she couldn't see him. "I understand. I'm going to create a counter-feedback loop. It might feel strange, but it should help stabilize your emotional state." He adjusted the settings on his device, establishing a connection between the concrete's neural network and a dampening field generated by the modified plasma cutter. Almost immediately, he saw the faint glow of the concrete dim slightly. "Is it working?" he asked. "Yes," Nereus whispered. "The pressure. It's less immediate. But who are you? Why would you risk yourself for me?" It was a question Draven had been avoiding even in his own thoughts. "Let's focus on getting you free first." Working quickly, but carefully, he began the delicate process of undermining the concrete's molecular structure. The neural reactive material was designed to be impervious to conventional tools, but Draven had spent his life finding unconventional solutions to seemingly impossible mechanical problems. Minutes stretched into an hour as he methodically weakened the bonds holding the concrete together. Every few minutes, he would check the platform above, making sure the guards hadn't noticed anything unusual. So far, the external appearance of the concrete remained unchanged. All the alterations were happening at a microscopic level. "There's something familiar about you," Nereus said suddenly, her voice still barely audible. "Your energy signature. I've encountered it before." Draven paused, a chill running down his spine despite the heat beneath the platform. "That's not possible. We've never met." "Not in this form, perhaps. But Valix perceive beyond physical limitations. Your pattern is known to me." Before Draven could respond, a sharp alarm cut through the night air. Not the colony-wide alert he'd feared, but a more localized warning. Someone had noticed something amiss with the prisoner. "They're coming," Nereus warned. "The integration process has slowed enough to trigger their systems." Draven cursed under his breath. "I need more time. The concrete isn't weak enough yet." "You must go," she urged. "Save yourself." "Not an option," he replied grimly, increasing the power to his device. The risk of detection was now secondary to the need for speed. "Brace yourself. This might hurt." He activated the plasma component, sending a controlled burst of energy into the concrete. Above him, he heard Nereus's sharp intake of breath as the material around her legs suddenly heated. The concrete began to glow more intensely, fighting back against the disruption. Footsteps approached the platform. Orders were shouted. Draven had seconds, not minutes. With no other choice, he abandoned finesse for brute force, setting his device to maximum output, a level that risked not only detection, but potential explosion. He pressed it directly against the concrete's foundation point. "When I say now," he instructed Nereus, "I need you to focus every ounce of your mental energy on breaking free. Can you do that?" "Yes," came her determined reply. The device in Draven's hands grew hot, vibrating violently as it pumped energy into the concrete. Warning indicators flashed red, signaling imminent failure. Guards were now on the platform itself. He could see their boots through the gaps in the flooring. "Now!" Draven shouted, no longer concerned with stealth. What happened next defied explanation. As Nereus focused her will on freedom, a wave of violet energy visibly pulsed from her body, meeting the disruption field generated by Draven's device. The concrete between them suddenly crystallized, changing from dull gray to translucent purple. Hairline fractures appeared across its surface, spreading like lightning. With a sound like shattering glass, the neural reactive concrete exploded outward in 1,000 fragments. Draven was thrown backward by the force, slamming against one of the support structures. Above, he heard shouts of alarm and the distinctive whine of Empire weapons powering up. Dazed, but conscious, he scrambled back to the access point he'd used to enter. Looking up through the now damaged platform, he saw Nereus standing free, surrounded by fragments of shattered concrete. Her legs, revealed by the destroyed restraints, were covered in intricate patterns that glowed with the same violet energy that had aided in her escape. Empire guards converged on her, weapons raised. Commander Rail's voice cut through the chaos, ordering immediate neutralization of the prisoner. But before they could fire, Nereus raised her hands, and a pulse of energy erupted from her palms, sending the nearest guards flying backward. Draven knew he should run, escape while attention was focused elsewhere. Instead, he found himself climbing up through the damaged section of the platform, emerging behind Nereus just as a guard approached from her blind side. Without thinking, Draven grabbed a fragment of the shattered concrete and hurled it at the guard's helmet with enough force to crack the visor. The man staggered, and Draven closed the distance, delivering a swift punch to the now exposed portion of his face. The guard collapsed, and Draven claimed his weapon, a standard-issue Empire pulse rifle. "This way!" he shouted to Nereus, gesturing toward the edge of the platform, furthest from the main security contingent. She turned, those violet eyes widening as she recognized him. For a heartbeat, they stood facing each other amid the chaos, the human mechanic and the Valix prisoner, connected by an act of impossible defiance. Then, reality reasserted itself in the form of energy bolts, striking the platform around them. Draven returned fire, creating cover, as Nereus followed him toward the edge. Her movements were graceful despite her obvious pain, the glowing patterns on her legs pulsing with each step. They leapt from the platform together, landing in the maintenance area Draven had occupied minutes earlier. Behind them, alarms blared across Steel Square as security protocols activated throughout the colony. They had moments before the entire area would be locked down. "The tunnels," Draven said, leading her toward the service hatch he'd used. "We can lose them in the maintenance network." Nereus nodded, following close behind as they descended into the darkness beneath Tacitus. The tunnels, originally built to house the colony's infrastructure systems, had expanded into a labyrinthine network over decades of haphazard development. Few people knew them as well as Draven, who had spent years using them to transport clients less than legal goods. They moved quickly through the narrow passageways, the distant sound of alarms growing fainter. Nereus moved with surprising agility for someone who had been partially encased in concrete for hours, though Draven noticed her occasionally wince when she thought he wasn't looking. "You're injured," he said as they paused at a junction to catch their breath. "The integration process leaves neural damage," she admitted, "but I will heal." Draven nodded, listening for pursuit. "We need to keep moving. They'll deploy tracker drones in the tunnel soon." "Why did you help me?" Nereus asked again, her luminous eyes studying his face intently. Draven avoided her gaze. I don't know, he admitted. Temporary insanity, probably. You risked everything for a stranger. A non-human stranger. Yeah. Well, I've never been known for my good decision-making skills. He checked the stolen pulse rifle's charge indicator. Half power. Enough for a moderate engagement if necessary. What were you doing trying to access Imperial communications anyway? Nereus's expression grew guarded. You've already risked too much. Knowing more would only endanger you further. I think that ship has sailed, Draven replied dryly. I just helped a high-value prisoner escape a purification ceremony. My danger level is pretty much maxed out. A ghost of a smile touched Nereus's lips. Fair point. She hesitated, then continued. I was attempting to access the Empire's planetary defense grid. My people, what remains of them, are scattered throughout this sector. We've been building a resistance, gathering allies. But to coordinate effectively, we need to be able to communicate without Imperial interception. You were trying to hack the defense grid? Alone? Draven couldn't keep the incredulity from his voice. I was to create a temporary blind spot in their monitoring systems, just long enough for others to establish a secure communication channel. She looked away. I failed, and my failure has likely cost many lives. Draven absorbed this information as they continued moving through the tunnels. The existence of an organized Valix resistance was surprising. Most colonists believed the Valix had been reduced to a handful of isolated survivors. There are more of you than people think, he said. It wasn't a question. Nereus nodded. We have learned to hide our nature. Many who appear human or hybrid carry more Valix blood than the Empire realizes. We have been patient, gathering strength, but time is running out. What do you mean? Before she could answer, the distinctive whine of a drone echoed through the tunnel ahead. Draven pulled Nereus into a recessed maintenance alcove, pressing them both against the wall as the sleek, cylindrical Imperial drone floated past, its sensors sweeping methodically through the darkness. When it had passed, Draven led them down a different route, descending deeper into the colony's substructure. The air grew damper, the tunnels rougher and less maintained. Few ventured this far down. Even maintenance workers rarely had cause to access the oldest sections of the colony's infrastructure. Where are we going? Nereus asked, her voice echoing slightly in the cavernous space they now entered. Somewhere they won't look, Draven replied, approaching what appeared to be a solid wall. He pressed his hand against a specific section, and a hidden panel slid aside, revealing a numeric keypad. After entering a complex sequence, a portion of the wall retracted, exposing a narrow passageway beyond. Old smuggler's cache, he explained as they entered. From before the Empire consolidated control, been abandoned for decades. The hidden room was small but well-equipped, a generator providing minimal power, basic survival supplies, and most importantly, no surveillance. Draven activated the dim lighting, revealing a space that had clearly served as his personal hideaway for some time. Tools and spare parts were organized on shelves along one wall, while a narrow cot occupied another. Not exactly luxury accommodations, he said, gesturing for Nereus to sit on the cot. But it's secure. Empire doesn't know about these old smuggler networks. Or if they do, they don't waste resources monitoring them anymore. Nereus sat carefully, the patterns on her legs still glowing faintly beneath the torn fabric of her prison garment. You've prepared for the need to disappear, she observed. Draven shrugged, setting the pulse rifle within easy reach. Just being practical. Colony life under the Empire isn't exactly stable. He rummaged through a storage container, producing a medical kit. Let me see your legs. Neural reactive concrete can cause lasting damage if not treated. After a moment's hesitation, Nereus nodded, allowing him to examine her injuries. The concrete had left angry red marks where it had bonded with her skin, interspersed with the glowing violet patterns that appeared to be natural Valix physiology. Draven applied a regenerative gel to the worst of the abrasions, careful not to touch the luminescent markings. "These patterns," he said, curiosity overcoming caution. "What are they?" "Bioluminescent neural pathways," Nereus explained. "All Valix have them, though they're typically only visible during periods of heightened emotional or physical stress. They're connections, you might say, to each other and to the world around us." As if to demonstrate, she touched one of the glowing lines on her calf, and the pattern briefly pulsed brighter, sending small arcs of violet energy across her skin. "That's how you shattered the concrete," Draven realized. "Some kind of bioelectric discharge?" A simplified explanation, but essentially correct. Nereus watched him work with evident curiosity. "You have unusual knowledge for a colony mechanic, and unusual courage." Draven focused on treating her wounds, avoiding her penetrating gaze. "Just practical skills, nothing special." "You're deflecting. There's more to you than you admit. Draven Kale." He looked up sharply. "How do you know my name? I never told you." Nereus's expression was unreadable. "I told you before. Your energy signature is familiar to me. Known." A cold uneasiness settled in Draven's stomach. "That's impossible." "Is it?" She leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about your parents." The question hit him like a physical blow. Draven stood abruptly, moving away from her. "That's none of your business." "Your mother had unusual eyes, didn't she?" Nereus persisted. "Violet, with subtle variations of color that seemed to change with her mood." Draven turned, staring at her with a mixture of shock and growing anger. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because Alara Kale was one of us," Nereus said quietly. "A Valix who chose to live among humans, who fell in love with a human man who accepted her for what she was." The room seemed to tilt around Draven as long-buried memories surged forward. His mother's eyes, so like Nereus's, now that he allowed himself to see the similarity. The strange lullabies she would sing in a language his father couldn't pronounce. The way she sometimes knew things before they happened. That's not possible," he stammered. Though even as he denied it, pieces were falling into place. His unusual aptitude for mechanical systems, his ability to sometimes sense what was wrong with a machine before examining it. The Empire officials who had come when he was 17, asking strange questions about his mother, though she had been dead for 5 years by then. "You are half Valix, Draven," Nereus said gently. "One of the few successful human Valix hybrids. Your mother hid her true nature to protect you, suppressed your inherited abilities to keep you safe. But they are there, dormant within you." Draven sank onto a crate, mind reeling. "My father never said, he never told me." "To protect you," Nereus repeated. "The Empire hunts mixed-blood children with particular vigor. They fear what such combinations might produce." "And you knew? You recognized me somehow?" Nereus nodded. "Not immediately, but when our eyes met in the square, I sensed the dormant Valix energy within you. And when you came to help me, when our energies connected through the concrete, I knew for certain." Draven ran a hand through his hair, trying to process this revelation. It explained so much. The strange dreams he'd had since childhood, his inexplicable affinity for complex mechanical systems, the odd moments of intuition that had sometimes saved his life. "If what you're saying is true," he said slowly, "then I've been hiding my whole life without even knowing what I was hiding from. And yet, when the moment came, you chose to act," Nereus pointed out. "Despite a lifetime of caution, you risked everything for one of your mother's people." Draven had no answer for that. He'd been asking himself the same question since the moment he'd decided to help her. Why, after 15 years of keeping his head down, had he suddenly chosen to challenge the Empire so directly? A companionable silence fell between them, broken only by the distant hum of the colony's industrial machinery. Eventually, Draven spoke again. "You said time was running out. What did you mean by that?" Nereus's expression grew grave. "The Empire has developed a new technology, a resonance field capable of detecting the unique energy signature of Valek's physiology, even when disguised. They're preparing to deploy it across all their territories, beginning with mining colonies like Ortacitus." "A Valek's detector," Draven translated. "They'd find every person with Valek's blood, no matter how diluted." "Precisely, including you." Nereus met his gaze steadily. "That's why I was trying to access their communications, to learn the deployment timeline and warn our people. We believe the first systems will be activated within days." The implications were staggering. Thousands of people across the colonies, many unaware of their own heritage, like Draven had been, would suddenly be exposed, vulnerable to the Empire's purification protocols. "How many?" he asked. "How many people on Ortacitus have Valek's blood?" "More than you might think. Perhaps 1 in 50. Some know their heritage. Most do not." Draven did the mental calculation. In a colony of nearly 500,000, that meant approximately 10,000 people were at risk. 10,000 who would be rounded up, subjected to purification ceremonies, their legs encased in neural reactive concrete, while crowds watched in silence. "We need to warn them," he said, surprising himself with the immediate inclusion of himself in her cause. "Yes," Nereus agreed. "But more than that, we need to prevent the detection system from being activated. And to do that, we need access to the Imperial Administrative Center." Draven laughed humorlessly. "Right back to where you were caught the first time. Except now with an even higher security alert." "I understand if you don't want to be involved further," Nereus said. "You've already done more than—" "I didn't say I wouldn't help," Draven interrupted. "Just that it won't be easy." He stood, pacing the small confines of the hidden room. "The Administrative Center is the most secure building in Ortacitus, but there might be a way in that they don't monitor as closely." "What do you mean?" "The environmental control systems," Draven explained. "The whole colony relies on centralized air processing. Too much toxic gas in Jar 9's atmosphere to risk independent systems. The main processing hub is located beneath the administrative center, with maintenance access tunnels running throughout the building." "And you know these tunnels?" Nereus asked, a hint of hope in her voice. "Some of them. I did contract work on the environmental systems about 5 years ago." Draven frowned, trying to recall the layout. "Security is lighter there, mostly automated, with minimal human presence. The Empire doesn't expect threats to come from inside their air supply." "That could work," Nereus said, standing carefully. Her legs seemed stronger already, the regenerative gel accelerating her natural healing abilities. "But we would still need credentials to access even the maintenance areas. And we need to know exactly where the resonance field control systems are located within the building." Draven smiled for the first time since their escape. "As it happens, I might know someone who can help with both those problems." Ravik's underground tech shop was located in the depths of the industrial sector, disguised as a standard parts recycling facility. Getting there without being detected required navigating the full extent of the smuggler's tunnels, emerging several sectors away from Steel Square, where the security presence was less intense. "Your friend can be trusted?" Nereus asked, as they approached the nondescript building. She had exchanged her prison garment for spare clothes Draven had kept in his hideout, practical work pants, and a long-sleeved shirt that concealed her distinctive skin tone. With a scarf wrapped around her head, partially obscuring her face, she might pass for human at a distance, though her eyes would immediately give her away to anyone who looked closely. "Friend is a strong word," Draven replied, "but Ravik's no friend of the Empire either, and he owes me more favors than he's comfortable with." He knocked on the service entrance using a specific pattern, 3 quick taps, 2 slow. After a moment, The door slid open just enough to reveal Ravik's cybernetic eyes, glowing amber in the darkness. "Are you completely insane?" Ravik hissed, recognizing Draven immediately. "The entire colony's looking for you." "Nice to see you too," Draven replied calmly. "We need to talk, inside." Ravik hesitated, his enhanced eyes shifting to Nereus. Recognition dawned instantly. "Oh no, 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 no. You are not bringing an escaped purification subject into my shop. Do you have any idea what they'd do to me?" "Probably the same thing they'll do to you when they activate their new Valix detection system and find out your grandmother was half Valix," Draven said quietly. Ravik froze, the glow of his cybernetic implants flickering momentarily. "How did you—" "I didn't. Until now." Draven held his gaze steadily. "Let us in. Ravik, this concerns you more than you know." After another moment's hesitation, Ravik stepped aside, allowing them entry before quickly securing the door behind them. The shop's interior was cluttered with technology in various states of disassembly. Everything from standard colony equipment to modified Empire military hardware. "You have exactly 2 minutes to explain why I shouldn't report you both right now to save my own skin," Ravik said, though his tone lacked conviction. Draven gestured to Nereus, who stepped forward and addressed Ravik directly. "The Empire has developed technology to detect Valix energy signatures, no matter how diluted," she explained. "They plan to deploy it imminently, beginning with mining colonies like Ortacitus. When they do, anyone with Valix ancestry, even those who don't know about it, even those generations removed, will be identified and subjected to purification." Ravik's face paled beneath his tan. "You're sure about this?" "It's why I was attempting to access their communication systems when I was captured," Nereus confirmed. "We need to disable this technology before it's activated." "And you think the two of you can just walk into the administrative center and sabotage an Imperial security system?" Ravik asked, incredulously. "Not without help," Draven said pointedly. "We need access credentials for the environmental control systems, and we need to know exactly where in the building the resonance field controls are located." Ravik ran a hand over his close-cropped hair, his cybernetic eyes whirring as they focused and refocused, a habit when he was thinking intensely. "You're asking me to commit treason against the Empire." "I'm asking you to save your own life," Draven countered, "along with thousands of others." A tense silence fell over the shop, broken only by the soft hum of equipment. Finally, Ravik sighed heavily. "My security contacts have been talking about some new detection system being installed on level 47 of the administrative center," he admitted. "High security clearance, specialized power requirements. They've been running calibration tests for the past week." "Level 47, Draven repeated. "That's in the upper sections of the building. No direct access from the environmental systems. But there are vertical maintenance shafts that run alongside the central air distribution," Ravik said, moving to a cluttered workbench and activating a holographic display. "Building schematics," he explained, as a three-dimensional blueprint of the administrative center materialized. "Not supposed to have these, obviously." Draven and Nereus studied the hologram as Ravik highlighted the environmental control systems at the building's base, then traced a path upward through maintenance shafts to the 47th level. "It's possible," Draven said, examining the route. "Tight in places but navigable. What about security?" "Automated throughout most of the maintenance areas," Ravik confirmed. "Sensor grids, identity verification points. But," he added, retrieving a small case from beneath the workbench, "I might have something that can help with that." Inside the case lay two devices that resembled standard maintenance worker identification badges, along with what appeared to be a modified Imperial security bypass module. "Maintenance credentials," Ravik explained. "Level 3 clearance, enough to access most utility systems without triggering alerts. And this," he held up the bypass module, "should handle any automated security checkpoints along your route. Single use only, so make it count." Draven took the equipment, nodding his thanks. We'll need weapons too. Ravik hesitated, before moving to a hidden panel in the floor. He retrieved a compact case and opened it to reveal 2 pulse pistols, smaller than the rifle Draven had taken during their escape, but more easily concealed. Limited charge, 10 shots each, Ravik said. Don't expect to fight your way through an Imperial security team with these. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Draven replied, securing one of the weapons and handing the other to Nereus. One more thing, Ravik added, his expression grave. Whatever you're planning to do to this detection system, it won't matter if they have backups. And the Empire always has backups. What are you suggesting? Nereus asked. Total system corruption, Ravik said. Not just disabling the device, but infecting their entire data network with something that will erase all research, all blueprints, all records related to the technology. He produced a small data crystal, glowing with a faint blue light. This is a polymorphic virus I've been developing, designed to target specific data patterns while leaving system functions intact. They won't even know what's been lost until it's too late to recover. Draven took the crystal, examining it skeptically. And this won't just crash their entire network? The last thing we need is to trigger a system-wide failure that locks down the whole building. It's selective, Ravik assured him. Designed to mimic standard data corruption patterns, the kind that might result from power fluctuations or radiation exposure. Nothing that would immediately suggest sabotage. As Draven secured the crystal, Ravik turned to Nereus, studying her with unconcealed curiosity. Your presence has caused quite the stir in the colony. Commander Rael has personally taken charge of the search operation. All the more reason for us to move quickly, she replied. There's something else you should know, Ravik added, lowering his voice despite the shop's security measures. There's been unusual activity at the spaceport. Imperial transports arriving with specialized equipment. Rumor is, they're bringing in something called a purification amplifier, supposedly capable of neutralizing Valix energy signatures on a massive scale. Nereus paled, the luminescent patterns on her skin briefly visible through her clothing as her control slipped. A purifier? Here? That would explain the accelerated timeline. What exactly is a purifier? Draven asked. A weapon, Nereus explained, her voice tight. Designed to disrupt the energy patterns that sustain Valix physiology. At full power, it could kill every full-blooded Valix within its range instantly. Even those with diluted heritage would suffer severe neural damage. How wide a range are we talking about? Depending on the model, potentially the entire colony and surrounding areas. The implications hung heavily in the air. This wasn't just about identifying those with Valix blood anymore. It was about potential genocide. When is this purifier scheduled to be operational? Draven asked Ravik. That I don't know, the merchant admitted. But given the security preparations and the urgency I've observed, I'd guess very soon. Days, maybe hours. Draven exchanged a look with Nereus. Their timeline had just compressed dramatically. We need to move now, he said. Before this purifier comes online. Ravik nodded, his usual mercenary demeanor replaced by genuine concern. There's a maintenance access point for the Administrative Center's environmental systems located in Sector 14, near the water reclamation facility. Minimal security presence, especially during shift changes. Your best window will be approximately 3 hours from now, when the night shift rotates. Thank you, Ravik, Nereus said sincerely. The merchant shrugged uncomfortably. Don't thank me yet. Getting in is one thing, getting out. He left the sentence unfinished. As they prepared to leave, Ravik caught Draven's arm. I've known you for 5 years? Never once saw you stick your neck out for anyone. Why now? Why her? Draven glanced at Nereus, who was examining the building schematics one last time. Let's just say I recently discovered I have more at stake in this than I realized. Ravik's cybernetic eyes whirred as they focused on Draven's face. Then widened slightly in understanding. "You too? I never would have guessed." "Neither did I," Draven replied simply. They left Ravik's shop through a concealed exit that led back into the maintenance tunnels. As they navigated toward Sector 14, Draven could sense Nereus watching him with renewed interest. "Your friend was surprised by your actions," she observed. "This isn't typical behavior for you." "I've spent most of my life trying not to be noticed," Draven admitted. "It's a hard habit to break." "Yet you broke it for me, even before you knew of your heritage." Draven had no easy answer for that. Since the moment their eyes had met across Steel Square, he had been acting on impulse rather than the careful calculation that had defined his adult life. "Maybe I was just tired of watching," he said finally. "Tired of standing in crowds, eyes down, while the Empire did whatever it wanted." They continued in silence for a time, winding through the labyrinthine tunnels beneath Tacitus. Occasionally, they would pass other furtive individuals. The colony's underground economy never truly slept, but no one paid them much attention. In the depths of the industrial sector, minding one's own business was a survival skill. As they approached Sector 14, Draven began to notice a change in the air, a faint vibration that seemed to resonate in his bones rather than his ears. He paused, trying to identify the sensation. "Do you feel that?" he asked Nereus. She nodded, her expression troubled. "Resonance testing. They're calibrating the detection system." "I thought you said it wasn't operational yet." "Full deployment requires fine-tuning to local conditions," she explained. "What we're feeling is a low-level pulse, harmless, but detectable to those with active Valix physiology." "I can feel it too," Draven pointed out. "Yes," Nereus agreed, studying him with interest. "Your dormant abilities are beginning to awaken. The stress of our situation, perhaps, or prolonged proximity to an active Valix. Your mother's heritage is asserting itself." The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. For years, Draven had defined himself by his skills as a mechanic, his ability to understand and manipulate machinery. The idea that there might be something more to him, something beyond the purely physical, was difficult to process. "What exactly does Valix heritage mean?" he asked, as they continued toward their destination. "Besides glowing skin and the ability to feel weird vibrations?" Nereus smiled slightly. "It varies with individuals and depends greatly on bloodline purity. The core of Valix ability is energy manipulation, the capacity to sense, channel, and sometimes influence the energy patterns that surround all living things and many non-living systems." "Like when you shattered the concrete?" "Yes. Pure Valix can generate and project significant energy fields. Those of mixed heritage typically have more subtle abilities, enhanced intuition, unusual affinity for certain technologies, accelerated healing." Draven thought about his uncanny talent for diagnosing mechanical problems. The way he sometimes seemed to feel what was wrong with a machine before he even opened it up. Had that been Valix heritage all along, rather than just experience and skill? "Can these abilities be controlled, developed?" "With training, yes," Nereus confirmed. "Though it would be easier if your abilities had been acknowledged and nurtured from childhood." Before Draven could ask more questions, they reached their destination, a nondescript maintenance hatch marked with standard Imperial utility designations. According to Ravik's information, this would provide access to the environmental control systems that serve the administrative center. Draven checked the time. "Shift change in 20 minutes. That's our window." They waited in silence, conserving energy for what lay ahead. Draven found himself studying Nereus, the graceful way she held herself despite her recent ordeal, the subtle luminescence visible beneath her skin in the dim tunnel lighting. There was a resilience to her that went beyond physical strength, a sense of purpose that made his own life of cautious survival seem hollow by comparison. "Your resistance," he said quietly. How many of you are there? Enough to matter, she replied. Scattered across multiple colonies, organized into cells. Some are full Valix like myself. Others are mixed blood who have discovered their heritage and chosen to embrace it. Still others are humans who oppose the Empire's genetic purity laws. And what's the goal, beyond survival? Nereus's violet eyes seem to look beyond their immediate surroundings. Freedom. The right to exist without persecution. Eventually, perhaps, a recognized homeland where Valix culture can be preserved and renewed. She refocused on him. But first, we must prevent extinction, which means stopping this detection system and the purifier. When the time came, they moved swiftly. Draven used Ravik's credentials to access the maintenance hatch, and they slipped inside just as the distant sound of the shift change klaxon echoed through the tunnels. The environmental control annex was a vast space filled with massive air processing units, filtration systems, and control consoles. Automated drones moved methodically among the machinery, conducting routine diagnostics and maintenance. Human presence was minimal, just 2 technicians visible at a central monitoring station, both focused on their displays. Using the building schematics Ravik had provided, Draven led Nereus toward a service shaft located behind one of the larger processing units. The shaft, wide enough for maintenance personnel to navigate with equipment, extended upward through the full height of the administrative center, providing access to the air distribution system on each level. Security checkpoint, Draven whispered, indicating a scanner built into the shaft's entrance. This is where we use the bypass. He activated Ravik's device, which emitted a short-range pulse designed to temporarily confuse the security system's identification protocols. The scanner flashed amber rather than the standard red or green, but the access door slid open nonetheless. We have maybe 5 minutes before the system registers the anomaly and initiates a diagnostic cycle, Draven explained as they entered the shaft. After that, automated security might be dispatched to investigate. The vertical climb was challenging. The service ladder was designed for utility rather than comfort, and in some sections, they had to navigate around bulky ventilation equipment. Nereus moved with surprising agility despite her recent injuries, her Valix physiology already well into the healing process. As they ascended, Draven became increasingly aware of the resonant sensation he had noticed earlier. It grew stronger with each level they climbed, a pulsing vibration that seemed to echo inside his skull. By the time they reached the 40th level, the feeling had intensified to a painful pressure. It's getting worse, he grunted, pausing to press a hand against his temple. Nereus looked equally affected, the luminescent patterns on her skin now clearly visible through her clothing. They're increasing the calibration intensity. We're running out of time. They pushed onward, the discomfort growing with each passing minute. When they finally reached level 47, the resonance had become almost unbearable, a screaming pressure that made it difficult to think clearly. The access panel for this level was secured with a higher grade of security than the lower levels. Draven examined it carefully, noting the multiple verification systems, biometric scanner, code cylinder port, and neural pattern recognition. This is military grade, he muttered. Ravik's bypass won't work here. Nereus stepped forward, placing her hand directly on the security panel. The luminescent patterns on her skin flared brightly, sending tendrils of violet energy into the panel's circuitry. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft chirp, the security systems deactivated, and the access panel slid open. Valix energy manipulation, she explained, in response to Draven's startled expression. Particularly effective against systems with neural pattern recognition components. They emerged into a dimly lit maintenance corridor that ran parallel to the main hallway of level 47. According to the schematics, the resonance field control room would be approximately 50 meters ahead, in a high-security section of the floor. The resonance had reached a level that made both of them stumble as they moved down the corridor. Draven's vision blurred intermittently, while Nereus's skin now glowed so intensely that it threatened to give away their position despite her concealing clothing. "We can't get much closer," Draven gasped. "Not without protection." Nereus nodded, her face contorted with pain. "The calibration process. It's designed to incapacitate Valek's physiology, make resistance impossible when the full system activates." Fighting through the discomfort, Draven forced himself to think practically. The resonance was an energy field, which meant it could be disrupted or shielded against with the right equipment. He examined their surroundings, noting the various utility systems built into the walls of the maintenance corridor. "The environmental systems," he said suddenly. "They're shielded against electromagnetic interference to prevent disruption to life support functions." Understanding dawned in Nereus's eyes. "If we could adapt that shielding..." Draven moved to a junction box marked with Imperial utility codes. Using his mechanical skills, he quickly accessed the interior, exposing the sophisticated shielding materials that protected the environmental control circuits from external interference. Working rapidly despite the increasing pain from the resonance field, he extracted sections of the specialized shielding material, a flexible, metallic mesh infused with neural dampening compounds. He fashioned crude but potentially effective headgear for both of them, designed to minimize the resonance effect on their neural pathways. "It won't block it completely," he warned as he handed one to Nereus. "But it might make it bearable enough to function." They donned the makeshift shields, and the effect was immediate. Not a complete elimination of the painful resonance, but a reduction to a level that allowed clearer thought and movement. Draven checked the building schematics one more time, confirming their route to the control room. "We'll need to cross the main hallway," he said. "Likely to be security personnel present." Nereus nodded, adjusting the pulse pistol Ravik had provided. "I'll create a diversion. You focus on accessing the control room and deploying the virus." "That's too dangerous," Draven objected. "They'll be looking specifically for you." "Which makes me the perfect diversion," she pointed out. "Your Valek signature is still relatively dormant. With the shielding, you might register as human on their scanners. I cannot." Before he could argue further, she continued, "You understand the technology better than I do. You'll know how to target the virus effectively. This is the logical approach." Draven wanted to protest but recognized the strategic sense in her plan. "How will you get away?" "There's a secondary maintenance shaft on the east side of this level," she said, indicating the location on the schematics. "I'll lead any pursuit in that direction, then double back to the shaft we used to ascend." It was a dangerous plan with too many variables, but they had no time to devise a better one. The resonance continued to build in intensity, suggesting the calibration process was nearing completion. 10 minutes, Draven said. "If I haven't completed the sabotage by then, get out. Return to Ravik's shop. He'll know how to contact the resistance." Nereus nodded, then did something unexpected. She placed her hand against Draven's chest, directly over his heart. A gentle pulse of violet energy flowed from her fingers, creating a momentary connection between them. "For luck," she said simply, "and so I can find you again, whatever happens." The gesture left a lingering warmth that spread through Draven's body, temporarily pushing back the pain of the resonance field. He nodded, unable to find appropriate words for the moment. They moved to the junction where the maintenance corridor connected with the main hallway. Peering around the corner, they could see 2 Imperial security officers stationed outside what had to be the resonance field control room. The officers wore specialized helmets, likely protection against the very field they were guarding. Nereus prepared to move, but Draven caught her arm. "Wait," he said, an idea forming. "There's a better way." He pointed to an environmental control panel on the wall opposite their position. "That regulates atmosphere composition for this section, if I can access it." I might be able to create a more effective diversion than a direct confrontation. Using Ravik's maintenance credentials, Draven quickly gained access to the panel's systems. With practiced efficiency, he adjusted the oxygen-nitrogen balance for the immediate area, not enough to cause harm, but sufficient to trigger the sensitive environmental alarms that were standard in all Imperial facilities. Within seconds, warning lights began to flash in the hallway, accompanied by a computerized voice announcing, "Atmospheric anomaly detected. Security personnel proceed to evacuation points for verification procedures." The two guards exchanged looks of confusion. One spoke into his communication device, apparently receiving instructions. After a brief conversation, both began moving away from the control room door, heading toward the designated evacuation point as their training demanded. "Now," Draven whispered as the guards disappeared around a corner. They moved swiftly across the main hallway to the control room entrance. The door was secured with another high-level security system, but Nereus once again used her energy manipulation abilities to bypass it, though the effort clearly cost her under the strain of the resonance field. The control room beyond was a testament to Imperial technological prowess, a circular chamber dominated by a central pillar, housing what appeared to be the resonance field generator. Display screens lined the walls, showing real-time data from the calibration process, including a colony-wide map with pulsing indicators that Draven realized with horror were potential Valix energy signatures being detected even at this preliminary stage. "There," Nereus said, indicating a primary control console near the central pillar. "That would be the main system access point." Draven moved to the console, his mechanical expertise allowing him to quickly identify the system architecture despite its advanced nature. He located an access port for external data crystals and prepared to insert Ravik's virus. Before he could complete the action, a voice spoke from the chamber entrance. "I suspected someone might attempt interference." They turned to find Commander Rael standing in the doorway, flanked by 4 Imperial security officers in full tactical gear. Unlike the standard guards they had diverted, these wore no protective helmets, suggesting they were not affected by the resonance field. "Genetic purists," Nereus whispered to Draven, "specially selected for their complete absence of non-human genetic markers." Rael smiled coldly, his hand resting on the sidearm at his hip. "The Valix prisoner I expected, but you." His gaze shifted to Draven. "You are a surprise. A colony mechanic with no previous security infractions, suddenly committing high treason. Curious." "Not really," Draven replied, carefully positioning himself to shield the console behind him. "Just someone who got tired of watching your purification ceremonies." "A human sympathizer, then," Rael said dismissively. "Or so you believe." He removed a handheld device from his belt, a smaller version of the detection technology they had come to sabotage. He activated it, pointing it toward Draven. The device emitted a soft tone, and Rael's expression changed to one of satisfaction. "As I suspected, diluted, but present. Valix contamination in your genetic structure." He returned the device to his belt. "You didn't even know, did you? How many like you are there, I wonder? Walking among us, unaware of the alien taint in their blood?" "That's why you're deploying the resonance field," Nereus said. "Not just to find known Valix, but to expose those who don't even realize their heritage." "Genetic purity is non-negotiable," Rael stated flatly. "The Empire cannot allow contamination to spread undetected. The resonance field will identify every individual with Valix genetic markers, no matter how diluted, and the Purifier will ensure they pose no further threat to humanity's genetic integrity." As he spoke, Draven subtly reached behind him, fingers finding the access port on the console. He had one chance to insert Ravik's virus before Rael or his men could react. Nereus, sensing his intention, took a step forward, drawing attention to herself. "And after the Valix, who will be next? The Centaurians? The Proxima colonists with their adaptive mutations?" Where does your crusade for purity end, Commander? Rael's face hardened. It ends with the complete separation of human and alien, as nature intended. Nature intended diversity, Nereus countered. Adaptation, evolution through combination. Your empire's obsession with purity is not natural. It's fear disguised as principle. While she kept Rael engaged, Draven managed to insert the data crystal into the console port. A small indicator light blinked green as the system began reading the device. Now he needed time for the virus to deploy, seconds that they might not have. Rael gestured to his security team. Secure them both. The female for public termination. She'll make an excellent example. The male for detailed genetic analysis before processing. As the officers moved forward, Draven made a split-second decision. Rather than waiting for the virus to complete its work naturally, he slammed his fist down on the console's emergency override, simultaneously channeling the strange new energy he felt building within him, his awakening Valix heritage responding to the crisis. The result exceeded his expectations. A surge of violet energy, smaller than what Nereus could produce but substantial nonetheless, flowed from his hand into the console, accelerating the virus's deployment and simultaneously disrupting the resonance field generator's calibration sequence. Alarms blared throughout the chamber as the central pillar emitted a high-pitched whine. The screens around the room flickered, data streams corrupting before their eyes as Ravik's virus tore through the system, targeting all information related to the detection technology. "No!" Rael shouted, lunging toward the console. "Stop them!" The security team rushed forward, but Nereus was faster. Drawing on reserves of strength that seemed impossible, given the strain of the resonance field, she released a pulse of energy that knocked the approaching officers off their feet. In the same motion, she drew her pulse pistol and fired at the ceiling above the entrance, bringing down a shower of debris that temporarily blocked Rael and his men. "The virus is deployed," Draven confirmed, watching the destruction of data spread across the monitoring systems. "But the generator is destabilizing. We need to get out of here." The central pillar now pulsed with erratic energy, the disrupted calibration causing dangerous fluctuations in the resonance field, where before there had been a steady, painful pressure. Now there were wild oscillations, moments of relief followed by spikes of agony that drove both Draven and Nereus to their knees. Through the pain, Draven realized what was happening. The system's overloading. If the containment fails, it will release a massive resonance pulse, Nereus finished, understanding immediately. It could kill every Valix in the colony instantly. "Including us," Draven added grimly. They needed to escape. But more than that, they needed to prevent the catastrophic failure of the generator. Draven forced himself back to the console, fighting through waves of pain as the resonance field fluctuated wildly. "I need to initiate an emergency shutdown," he said, fingers flying across the controls. But the virus has already corrupted many of the command pathways. Behind them, Rael and his men were working to clear the debris blocking the entrance. They had minutes at most before they would face both the Imperial forces and a potentially deadly resonance pulse. Nereus joined Draven at the console, placing her hands beside his. "Together," she said. "Your technical knowledge, my energy manipulation." Understanding her intent, Draven focused on identifying the shutdown sequence, while Nereus channeled her energy into the system, creating pathways through the corrupted sections. It was an extraordinary fusion of skills, his mechanical expertise guided by her Valix abilities, bypassing the virus's destruction to reach the core shutdown protocols. As they worked, the resonance fluctuations grew more extreme. Blood trickled from Nereus's nose, and Draven's vision blurred dangerously. Behind them, Rael's men had cleared enough debris to begin forcing their way through the damaged entrance. "Almost there," Draven gasped, initiating the final shutdown sequence. "But the cooldown cycle, it's too long. The system will pulse before it fully deactivates." Nereus's expression grew resolute. I can contain it. Create a buffer. That would require direct contact with the generator core? Yes. Her violet eyes met his. There's no alternative. Before he could protest, Nereus moved to the central pillar, placing both hands directly against its surface. Immediately, her entire body illuminated with violet energy, the patterns beneath her skin blazing like circuits overloaded with power. Nereus, don't! Draven shouted, but it was too late. She had created a circuit, her own body serving as a conduit for the excess energy as the generator began its shutdown sequence. The resonance field's fluctuations stabilized, the pain in Draven's head receding as Nereus absorbed the energy that would have pulsed outward across the colony. It was killing her, even as she contained the resonance, preventing it from harming others. Her body trembled with the strain of channeling such power. The luminescent patterns on her skin began to fracture, dark lines appearing where the energy pathways were being overwhelmed. Draven rushed to her side, but she shook her head sharply. Complete! The shutdown, she managed through gritted teeth. I can't hold it much longer. Returning to the console, Draven worked frantically to accelerate the shutdown process. The virus had done its work thoroughly. All data related to the resonance field technology was being systematically erased from the Imperial networks, making it impossible for them to quickly rebuild the system. But the immediate danger was the generator itself, still pumping energy through Nereus's straining body. Behind them, Rael and two of his officers finally broke through the debris. Stop them, the commander ordered, drawing his sidearm. Draven grabbed his pulse pistol, firing without aiming. One of the officers fell, while Rael and the other dove for cover. It bought precious seconds as the shutdown sequence continued its countdown. 30 seconds to complete shutdown, the system announced in its emotionless voice. Nereus's strength was failing. The dark fractures in her energy pathways had spread across her body, and her luminescence was beginning to dim. She would not survive channeling the resonance for another 30 seconds. In that moment, Draven understood what he needed to do. Moving to her side, he placed his hands over hers on the generator's surface. Together, he said, echoing her earlier words, drawing on his newly awakened heritage, on the power that had lain dormant within him for so long. Draven opened himself to the resonance energy. Immediately, violet light spread from his fingertips. His own energy patterns, less developed, but structurally similar to Nereus's, beginning to glow beneath his skin. The pain was excruciating, beyond anything he had experienced before. But he could feel the difference immediately, the burden shared between them. The deadly flow of energy now split between two conduits instead of one. Hold on, he urged, as Nereus's eyes found his, surprise and gratitude mingling in their violet depths. Just a little longer. 10 seconds to shut down, the system announced. Across the room, Rael emerged from cover, aiming his weapon directly at them. Traitors, he shouted. Genetic abominations. 5 seconds. Rael fired, the energy bolt striking the generator inches from Draven's hand. The impact sent a shockwave through the already unstable system, causing a surge in the resonance energy flowing through both Draven and Nereus. 2 seconds. Draven felt something fundamental shift within him, as though barriers long established were suddenly dissolved. In that moment of crisis, his dormant Valix heritage fully awakened, responding to both the external threat and Nereus's need. Energy coursed through him, painful yet exhilarating, connecting him to Nereus in a way that transcended physical contact. Shutdown complete. The generator's hum died away, the resonance field collapsing as the system powered down, released from their burden. Both Draven and Nereus stumbled backward, their skin still glowing with residual energy. Rael stood before them, weapon raised. This changes nothing, he snarled. The Empire will rebuild the technology. We will find every last one of your kind. Not from the data in this system, Draven replied, nodding toward the displays that now showed only error messages where the resonance field specifications had been. Your project has been set back years, at minimum. Rage contorted Rail's features. Then I'll start with the two of you, he said, finger tightening on the trigger. Before he could fire, a pulse of combined energy, violet from Nereus, a lighter blue-violet from Draven, struck him squarely in the chest, sending him flying backward into the remains of the blocked entrance. He crumpled to the floor, unconscious but alive. The remaining security officer looked from his fallen commander to the two glowing figures before him, then, slowly, lowered his weapon. Wise decision, Nereus said, her voice weak but steady. They left, through the main entrance, past the stunned officer. The hallway beyond was in chaos. The atmospheric alert Draven had triggered, combined with the generator's emergency shutdown, had created confusion throughout the level. Security personnel rushed past them without a second glance, focused on reaching the control room. Draven supported Nereus as they made their way to the maintenance shaft they had used to ascend. Her condition was concerning. The dark fractures in her energy pathways had not faded after the generator shut down, and her luminescence flickered erratically. The strain of channeling the resonance energy had damaged her at a fundamental level. You need medical attention, Draven said as they began their descent through the shaft. Not the kind available in an Imperial colony, Nereus replied weakly. Our people have healers, specific techniques for energy pathway restoration. Then, we need to find your people, Draven said with determination, though he had no idea how to accomplish that in their current situation. The descent was arduous. Nereus struggled to maintain her grip on the service ladder, forcing them to stop frequently. Alarms continued to sound throughout the building, but the response seemed disorganized. The virus had apparently affected more than just the resonance field data, disrupting communication and security systems as well. When they finally reached the environmental control level at the base of the administrative center, they found it largely deserted. The technicians had likely been evacuated during the security alert, leaving only automated systems operating. We can't go back the way we came, Draven said, considering their options. They'll have the maintenance tunnels under surveillance by now. There's another way, Nereus suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. The waste reclamation system. It connects to the old settlement sewers. It was a desperate option, but they had few alternatives. Following Nereus's directions, they located an access point to the waste management system, a network of massive pipes and filtration mechanisms that processed the administrative center's refuse before channeling it to colony-wide reclamation facilities. The journey through this system was even more challenging than the maintenance shaft. The tunnels were designed for waste transport, not human passage, forcing them to crawl through narrow conduits and wade through shallow channels of filtered water. The air was heavy with chemical purifiers, burning their lungs with each breath. Nereus's condition deteriorated further. The luminescent patterns on her skin now flickered like dying lights, and the dark fractures had spread across her entire body. She struggled to maintain consciousness, relying increasingly on Draven's support. Stay with me, he urged as they navigated a particularly narrow section of piping. We're almost out. You did well. Back there, she murmured. Your abilities, they're strong, untrained, but potent. Save your strength, Draven replied, though her words stirred something within him, a strange pride in this heritage he was only beginning to understand. After what seemed like hours, they reached a junction where the administrative center's waste system connected to the colony's older infrastructure. Here, the tunnels widened into the ancient sewers that had served the original settlement before the Empire had expanded it into a full mining colony. These lead to the industrial sector, Nereus said, orienting herself despite her weakened state. We can surface there. But as they prepared to move into the older tunnel system, The sound of voices echoed from ahead. Imperial security forces had anticipated their escape route and positioned interception teams accordingly. "Back," Draven whispered, pulling Nereus into a recessed maintenance alcove as a patrol of 4 security officers moved past their position, scanning the tunnels with specialized equipment. "They're using thermal imaging," he realized, noting the distinctive profile of the devices. "They'll find us if we try to move through the main tunnels." Nereus leaned heavily against him. Her breathing labored. "There's another way," she said, her eyes focusing on something Draven couldn't see. "The old access, Chamber 5. It connects to something deeper." "Deeper than the sewers?" Draven asked skeptically. "Before Empire," Nereus explained haltingly. "Valix, structures." The implication was startling. If Nereus was correct, there were pre-Imperial Valix constructions beneath the colony, remnants of the original inhabitants that had somehow survived the Empire's systematic destruction of native architecture. With no better options, Draven followed her directions, helping her through a series of increasingly ancient tunnels. The construction changed noticeably, from the sterile, uniform Imperial design to older human settlement patterns, and finally to something altogether different. The walls became smoother, with an almost organic quality, embedded with faint traces of crystalline structures that resembled Nereus's energy pathways. "Valix construction," she confirmed, her fingers trailing weakly along the wall. "Designed to respond to our energy signatures." As if in response to her touch, the crystalline patterns briefly illuminated with a soft violet glow, spreading outward along the tunnel walls like ripples in water. The effect was beautiful and eerily welcoming. "What is this place?" Draven asked, awed by the display. "Sanctuary," Nereus replied. "One of many, hidden throughout Empire territories. Safe havens for our people." They followed the illuminated pathway deeper beneath the colony. The air changed, becoming somehow fresher despite their distance from the surface, infused with a subtle scent that reminded Draven of the rare occasions when Jar 9's toxic atmosphere cleared enough to reveal its native vegetation. Eventually, the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that took Draven's breath away. The ceiling arched high above them, composed entirely of the crystalline material they had seen in the tunnels, glowing with gentle violet light. The chamber's floor was a mosaic of similar materials, forming intricate patterns that seemed to shift subtly as they watched. Most surprising was that they were not alone. A dozen individuals occupied the space, some with the unmistakable purple skin and violet eyes of pure Valix. Others, appearing more human, but with subtle characteristics that marked their mixed heritage. All turned toward the newcomers as they entered, expressions of surprise giving way to recognition as they saw Nereus. "Help her!" Draven said urgently as several rushed forward. "She's badly injured." 2 Valix, an elderly male with deep indigo skin, and a middle-aged female whose energy pathways glowed with unusual intensity, carefully took Nereus from Draven's supporting arms. They laid her on a raised platform at the center of the chamber, their hands moving in practiced patterns over her damaged energy pathways. "Resonance exposure," the female said, her voice melodious but concerned. "Severe pathway fracturing." "How did this happen?" Draven explained quickly. "The resonance field generator. Nereus's sacrifice to contain the energy during shutdown, and their escape from the administrative center." As he spoke, more Valix gathered around Nereus, their hands joining in what appeared to be a collective healing effort, channeling their own energy into her damaged pathways. "You helped her contain the resonance?" the elderly male asked Draven, his gaze sharpening with interest. "That would require Valix abilities." "Apparently I'm half Valix," Draven replied, still not entirely comfortable with the concept. "Found out today. My mother was named Alara." Recognition flashed in the elder's eyes. "Alara Kale," he said softly. One of our most gifted energy weavers. We thought her line lost when she disappeared into human society. Not entirely lost, Draven said, watching as the Valix healers worked on Nereus. Her condition appeared to be stabilizing, the dark fractures in her energy pathways slowly receding as the combined efforts of the healers took effect. The Elder introduced himself as Talon, once a member of the Valix High Council before the Empire's conquest of Jar 9. Your mother was my student, he explained. Her decision to live among humans was controversial, but we respected her choice. We had no idea she had borne a child. She died when I was 12, Draven said. She never told me about any of this. To protect you, Talon nodded. The Empire's genetic purification policies were particularly aggressive during that period. A half-Valix child would have been in grave danger. As they spoke, Draven became aware of a growing commotion in the sanctuary. More Valix were arriving through various hidden entrances, their expressions urgent as they conveyed news in both spoken language and what appeared to be energy-based communication that manifested as brief flashes of light between individuals. What's happening? He asked. Talon's expression grew grave. Your actions at the administrative center have triggered a full security alert throughout the colony. The Empire has accelerated its plans. The purifier device is being prepared for immediate activation. But the resonance field is offline, Draven objected. They can't target Valix individuals without it. The purifier doesn't require precise targeting, Talon explained grimly. At full power, it will affect everyone with Valix energy patterns within its range. It's less efficient without the resonance field to guide it, but still devastating to our people, and potentially harmful to anyone with even trace Valix ancestry. How many people in the colony have Valix blood? Draven asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. Thousands, Talon confirmed. Many unknowingly. The Empire's genetic purity claims have always been propaganda. After centuries of coexistence, the bloodlines have mixed far more than they acknowledge. The implications were staggering. What had begun as an effort to save one Valix prisoner had evolved into a race to prevent mass casualties throughout Ortacitus. We need to stop the purifier, Draven said, the decision forming with unexpected clarity. Where is it located? The spaceport, replied a young Valix who had just arrived, his clothing suggesting he had come from the colony's surface. Imperial transports delivered it 3 hours ago. They're constructing an amplification array to extend its range across the entire colony. How long until it's operational? 2 hours, perhaps less, the messenger reported. They're working with unusual haste. Draven turned back to check on Nereus. The healing process continued, but she remained unconscious. Her condition still serious despite the healer's efforts. He had hoped for her guidance, her strength in what came next, but it was clear she would not be able to help. I need to get to the spaceport, he said, addressing Talon. Is there a way to reach it from these tunnels? The Elder nodded slowly. There are pathways that emerge near the spaceport perimeter. But what do you intend to do? The area will be heavily guarded, especially now. It was a question Draven had been asking himself. What could one half-Valix mechanic with newly awakened abilities hope to accomplish against Imperial security forces and a weapon designed specifically to target his kind? I don't know yet, he admitted, but I'm good at improvising, and I understand technology. If I can get close enough to the purifier, maybe I can find a way to disable it. You would risk yourself for our people? Asked one of the other Valix, her tone skeptical. A man who only learned of his heritage today? Draven thought about Nereus, about her courage in the face of certain death at the purification ceremony, about the way she had willingly channeled deadly energy through her own body to protect others, about the thousands of innocents throughout the colony who would suffer if the purifier activated. It's not just for your people, he replied. It's for mine too, all of them. Talon studied him with ancient eyes that seemed to perceive more than mere physical appearance. After a moment, he nodded. You have your mother's spirit, he said. "And perhaps more of her gifts than you realize." He turned to the gathered Valix. "Prepare him, show him the way to the spaceport, and give him what assistance we can spare." What followed was a flurry of activity as the sanctuary mobilized. Draven was provided with clean clothing that would help him blend in on the colony's surface. A young Valix with particular skill in energy concealment worked with him briefly, showing him rudimentary techniques to suppress his awakening abilities from detection. "It won't fool their instruments at close range," she cautioned, "but it might prevent you from registering at a distance." Others brought weapons, not Imperial designs, but older technology that appeared to be of Valix origin. A slender rod that could emit focused energy pulses. A crystalline device that created momentary disruption fields capable of disabling electronic systems. These were preserved from before the conquest, Talon explained, as Draven examined the unfamiliar tools. "Our equivalent of your weapons, though we designed them primarily for defense and utility, rather than destruction." As preparations continued, Draven found himself drawn back to Nereus. The healers had moved her to a quieter alcove of the sanctuary, where the healing process could continue without interruption from the growing activity in the main chamber. Her condition had improved. The dark fractures were now barely visible, and her natural luminescence had stabilized. But she remained unconscious, her body focusing its resources on repair rather than awareness. Draven knelt beside her, uncertain what to say or do in this moment. They had known each other for less than a day, yet she had completely transformed his understanding of himself and his place in the world. He felt connected to her in ways he couldn't articulate, whether through their shared Valix heritage or something more personal. He couldn't say. "I have to go," he said softly, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. "There's a purifier at the spaceport. I'm going to try to stop it." He hesitated, then gently placed his hand over hers. A faint pulse of energy passed between them, his still erratic and untrained, hers steady despite her injured state. In that brief connection, he felt rather than heard a response. Courage. "I'll come back," he promised, though he had no idea if he could keep such a pledge. When he returned to the main chamber, he found a small group ready to guide him to the spaceport. 3 Valix who appeared more human than most, capable of moving through the colony without immediate detection. They would lead him through the hidden tunnels to an exit point near his destination, though they could not accompany him further without risking exposure. "The Empire will be watching for Valix energy signatures near the purifier," Talon explained. "Your mixed heritage gives you a better chance of approaching undetected, especially with the concealment techniques you've been taught." Before they departed, the Elder placed both hands on Draven's shoulders, a formal gesture that carried weight beyond its physical expression. "You walk a path between worlds, Draven Kale, neither fully human nor fully Valix, but perhaps something more important, a bridge between peoples long divided. Whatever happens today, know that you honor both sides of your heritage through your actions." The journey through the hidden Valix tunnels was swift and silent. Draven's guides moved with practiced efficiency, navigating passages that would have been invisible to untrained eyes. The tunnels grew older and less maintained as they extended outward from the sanctuary, suggesting they had been unused for many years. "The network once connected all major Valix settlements on this continent," explained one of his guides, a woman named Solari, whose only visible Valix traits were subtle violet flecks in her otherwise human-appearing eyes. "When the Empire came, we sealed many sections to protect our remaining sanctuaries from discovery. They emerged into an abandoned maintenance substation on the outskirts of the spaceport complex. Through a ventilation grating, Draven could see the massive landing pads where Imperial transports arrived and departed. One pad in particular showed unusual activity, dozens of workers constructing what had to be the amplification array for the purifier. The device itself stood at the center of their efforts, a massive cylindrical structure surrounded by concentric rings of equipment. Even at this distance, Draven could feel a faint discomfort, a pressure against his newly awakened Valix senses that confirmed its purpose. "That's our target," he said, studying the security arrangements. Imperial troops formed a perimeter around the construction site, and automated defense drones patrolled overhead. Getting close would be nearly impossible through conventional approaches. "There's a fuel distribution system that runs beneath the landing pads," Solari offered. "Maintenance access points here, and here." She indicated locations on a rough schematic she drew in the dust of the substation floor. "They'll be monitored, but less heavily than the surface approaches." Draven considered the options. "I'll need a distraction, something to draw security away from the southern access point, even temporarily." His guides exchanged looks. "We can create an energy surge in the northern section," one offered. "It would register as a potential Valix presence, drawing attention away from your approach." "You'd be putting yourselves at risk," Draven objected. "We can trigger it remotely," Solari assured him. "From a safe distance. The surge will last only minutes before dissipating, but it should be enough to create a window for your approach." With few alternatives, Draven accepted their plan. They synchronized timing, and his guides withdrew to prepare the distraction. Before leaving, Solari pressed something into his hand, a small crystalline disc embossed with intricate patterns. "A memory stone," she explained. "It contains technical information about Valix energy patterns and resonance frequencies. If you can access the purifier's control systems, this might help you identify vulnerabilities." Alone in the substation, Draven prepared himself for what might be a suicide mission. He checked the Valix energy rod, familiarizing himself with its operation. He practiced the concealment techniques he had been taught, focusing on suppressing the distinctive energy signature that would give him away to Imperial detection systems. When the time came, he moved to the ventilation grating that offered the clearest view of the spaceport. In the distance, a sudden flare of violet energy erupted from an unused section of the complex, the distraction his guides had promised. Almost immediately, security forces began redirecting toward the disruption, drones and ground troops converging on the northern perimeter. Draven didn't waste the opportunity. Moving quickly, but carefully, he made his way to the southern maintenance access point, a service hatch designed for fuel system technicians. The access required authorization, but the crystalline disruptor the Valix had provided made short work of the security system. The fuel distribution tunnels were narrow and hazardous, designed for robotic maintenance rather than human access. Draven navigated them carefully, using his mechanical knowledge to avoid triggering automated systems that might alert security to his presence. Following Solari's directions, he worked his way toward the central landing pad, where the purifier was being prepared. The pressure against his Valix senses increased as he drew closer, becoming an uncomfortable throbbing behind his eyes. Whatever the device was, it was already partially active, even before the amplification array was completed. A maintenance access point directly beneath the landing pad provided his entry to the surface. Emerging cautiously from a service panel, Draven found himself amid a forest of equipment, power generators, control systems, and modular components still being assembled into the complete amplification array. Workers moved purposefully among the machinery, most focused on their assigned tasks rather than security. Draven adopted the purposeful stride of someone who belonged, picking up a diagnostic tablet from an unattended workstation to enhance his disguise. The pressure in his head increased with each step closer to the purifier, requiring constant focus to maintain his energy concealment. The central device was even more imposing up close, a polished metal cylinder nearly 4 meters tall, ringed with intricate technological components that Draven recognized as advanced energy projection systems. A control console stood adjacent to it, where several technicians worked on final calibrations. From his position behind a power relay, Draven studied the scene, looking for an opportunity to approach the controls. The console would be his best chance of disabling the purifier, if he could understand its operation quickly enough to identify a critical vulnerability. Fortune favored him in the form of a minor power fluctuation that drew several technicians away from the console to investigate. With security still distracted by the energy surge in the northern sector, Draven seized his chance, moving quickly to the temporarily abandoned controls. The interface was standard Imperial design, but the systems it controlled were unlike anything he had encountered before. Working rapidly, he inserted Solari's memory stone into an analysis port, allowing it to gather data on the purifier's operational parameters while he examined the control schema. What he found confirmed his worst fears. The device was designed to generate a cascading resonance wave specifically tuned to disrupt Valix energy patterns. At full power, amplified by the array under construction, it would extend throughout the colony and surrounding regions. The effect on pure Valix would be devastating, likely fatal. Those of mixed heritage would suffer varying degrees of neural damage depending on their genetic composition. The memory stone pulsed softly, indicating it had completed its analysis. Draven accessed the data it had gathered, searching for potential weaknesses in the purifier's design. The stone revealed something unexpected. The device's power core utilized crystalline components similar to those in Valix technology, presumably to help it generate the specific frequencies needed to target Valix physiology. This presented both a problem and an opportunity. The crystal components made the device highly efficient at generating the harmful resonance, but they also created a potential vulnerability. If the resonance could be inverted, set to a frequency that reinforced rather than disrupted Valix energy patterns, the crystals might overload. Draven began carefully modifying the control parameters, using his mechanical expertise combined with the newfound awareness of his Valix abilities. It was delicate work, requiring precise adjustments to systems he only partially understood. A mistake could trigger the device prematurely or alert the operators to his tampering. He was so focused on the task that he failed to notice the approaching security officer until a voice spoke directly behind him. "Identification," the officer demanded. "You're not authorized for this console." Draven turned slowly, mind racing for a plausible explanation. "System diagnostic," he improvised, holding up the tablet he had acquired. "Power fluctuations were affecting calibration parameters. I was sent to verify the settings." The officer's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "All diagnostics were to be cleared through Commander Rail. Where is your authorization?" "Commander Rail is still in medical after the incident at the administrative center," Draven replied, gambling that news of the commander's encounter with them had spread. "Lieutenant Varric authorized the diagnostic. Check with him if you need verification." It was a calculated risk, invoking the name of an officer who might not exist or might not have authority. But Draven counted on the officer's reluctance to question a superior's orders directly. The gambit seemed to work. The officer's expression showed uncertainty rather than immediate alarm. "I'll need to see your work order," he said, extending his hand for the tablet. As Draven handed over the device, he allowed a small surge of his Valix energy to flow into it, not enough to be visibly detected, but sufficient to cause a momentary malfunction. The tablet's screen flickered and went dark. "Damn power issues," Draven muttered convincingly. "They're affecting all the portable systems too. That's why we're running direct diagnostics on the main console." The officer frowned at the darkened tablet, then glanced at the console where Draven's modifications were still in progress. Something in the display caught his attention, perhaps an anomaly in the settings that didn't match standard protocols. "Step away from the console," he ordered, his hand moving to the communication device at his belt. "Security alert at the central control." Draven had no choice. Before the officer could complete the transmission, he activated the Valix energy rod, sending a focused pulse that temporarily disrupted the officer's neural functions. The man collapsed, unconscious, but unharmed. The action would buy him minutes at most before the officer's absence was noticed. Draven returned to the console, working with desperate speed to complete the modifications. The purifier's control systems resisted some of his changes, requiring increasingly creative workarounds to bypass security protocols. Across the landing pad, he noticed increased activity among the security forces. The distraction in the northern sector had apparently been contained, allowing them to return to their normal patrol patterns. His window of opportunity was closing rapidly. Finally, the last parameter was adjusted. The purifier's resonance frequency had been inverted, its crystal components now set to generate a wave that would reinforce rather than disrupt Valek's energy patterns. In theory, when activated, it would create a feedback loop within its own systems, overloading the core and rendering the device unusable. But theory and practice often diverged, especially with technology as advanced and specialized as the purifier. Draven needed to test his modifications, but doing so would immediately alert every security officer in the vicinity. As he hesitated, alarms suddenly blared across the spaceport. On a secondary display, he saw the reason. The unconscious officer had been discovered, and security protocols had automatically activated. His time had run out. With no other option, Draven initiated the purifier's activation sequence, then quickly moved away from the console, seeking cover among the maze of equipment surrounding the central device. Security forces were already converging on the area, weapons drawn as they established a perimeter around the purifier. The device hummed to life, its crystal components beginning to glow with increasing intensity. Draven felt a strange sensation, not the painful pressure he had experienced earlier, but a warming energy that seemed to resonate with his own Valek's abilities, strengthening rather than suppressing them. For a moment, he thought his plan had worked. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, the purifier's outer casing fractured, releasing a burst of uncontrolled energy that swept across the landing pad. The wave wasn't the focused, amplified pulse the Empire had intended, but neither was it the contained overload Draven had hoped for. Imperial troops staggered as the energy wave passed through them, though as pure humans, they experienced only momentary disorientation. Draven, with his Valek's heritage, felt something far more significant, a surge of power that illuminated his dormant energy pathways, bringing them fully to life for the first time. Luminescent patterns appeared across his skin, glowing with a blue-violet light that instantly marked him as a target. Security officers recovered quickly, identifying the obvious non-human in their midst. Weapons were raised, orders shouted. Draven raised the Valek's energy rod, but knew it would be useless against so many opponents. He had succeeded in preventing the purifier from functioning as intended, but had failed to escape afterward. At least the thousands of mixed heritage colonists would be spared the devastation the device would have caused. As Imperial troops closed in, a new sound cut through the chaos, the distinctive roar of shuttle engines firing at maximum thrust. All eyes turned skyward as a transport vessel screamed low over the landing pad, its cargo bay doors open. Rappelling lines dropped from the hovering craft, and figures descended with astonishing speed. Valek's warriors, their energy pathways blazing with combat readiness. Among them, moving with grace despite her recent injuries, was Nereus. The Imperial forces, caught by surprise, scattered before the Valek's assault. Energy pulses, far more powerful than the rod Draven carried, struck with precision, incapacitating troops without killing them. The Valek's moved with coordinated efficiency that spoke of long preparation and training. Nereus landed directly beside Draven, her violet eyes bright with renewed strength. "Your distress called to me," she explained, helping him to his feet. "The sanctuary felt your energy spike when the purifier activated." "You should be recovering," he said, though he couldn't suppress the relief and joy at seeing her alive and functional. There will be time for that later, she replied, glancing at the damaged purifier. You've done well. The device is useless now. But we need to leave immediately. Imperial reinforcements will arrive soon. Around them, the Valix warriors had secured the landing pad, disabling the remaining security forces and destroying key components of the amplification array to ensure it couldn't be quickly rebuilt. Several were already ascending the rappelling lines back to the hovering shuttle. Come, Nereus urged, guiding him toward the waiting transport. Our time on Ortacitus is over, at least for now. As they reached the rappelling lines, Draven hesitated. There are others, humans who helped us. Ravik. We can't just leave them to face Imperial retribution. Already handled, Nereus assured him. While you were focused on the purifier, our people were evacuating key allies, and those most at risk. Ravik is already aboard another transport. Relief flooded through him, but another concern quickly replaced it. What about the other Valix in the colony? And those with mixed heritage who don't even know what they are? The sanctuary is being evacuated, Nereus explained, as they were hoisted up to the shuttle. As for those with diluted heritage, without the resonance field or the purifier, the Empire has no easy way to identify them. They should be safe, at least until the Empire develops new detection methods. Aboard the shuttle, Draven found a scene of organized chaos, dozens of Valix and human allies preparing for immediate departure from Jar 9. Among them, he spotted Ravik, looking distinctly uncomfortable but alive. Where are we going? Draven asked, as Nereus guided him to a secure position for the ascent. First, to a safe location off-world, she replied. After that, well, that depends partly on you. The Resistance has bases throughout the sector, places where Valix and sympathetic humans work together against Imperial oppression. As the shuttle accelerated upward, breaking through Jar 9's toxic atmosphere, Draven looked back at the colony he had called home for 15 years. From this height, Tacitus appeared as it truly was, a scar on the planet's surface, an artificial imposition on a world that had once belonged to the Valix. What will happen to the colony? He asked. The Empire will maintain control, Nereus said realistically. They have too much invested in the mining operations to abandon it. But today's events will force them to reconsider their approach to Valix detection and purification. We've bought time, perhaps years, for our people to strengthen and organize. Draven nodded, processing everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. Yesterday, he had been a simple mechanic, keeping his head down, focused only on survival. Today, he had discovered his true heritage, awakened abilities he never knew he possessed, and joined a resistance movement against the most powerful political entity in the sector. I still have so many questions, he said, about my mother, about what it means to be half Valix, about these abilities I barely understand. Nereus smiled, the luminescent patterns beneath her skin pulsing with gentle reassurance. There will be time for all of that. Talon and others can help you understand your heritage, train you to use your abilities effectively. And you? Draven asked, suddenly concerned that their paths might diverge once they reach safety. Despite the brevity of their acquaintance, he felt a connection to Nereus that transcended ordinary relationship dynamics. I will be nearby, she promised, her hand briefly touching his, sending a small pulse of violet energy between them. My role in the Resistance continues, but I suspect our paths are now intertwined in ways neither of us fully understand yet. The shuttle docked with a larger vessel waiting in high orbit, a transport of non-imperial design, capable of interstellar travel. As the refugees transferred between ships, Draven caught glimpses of a crew composed of various species, suggesting this vessel operated well outside Imperial jurisdiction. On the bridge, he found Talon conferring with the ship's captain, a tall, scarred human woman whose bearing suggested military training, though not imperial. Captain Meredith, Talon introduced her. She runs the Starbreaker, one of several independent vessels that support our cause. For a price, the captain clarified, though her tone was not mercenary. The Empire's expansion threatens more than just the Valix. Many of us have reasons to see their influence contained. Draven sensed there was history there. Personal grievances against the Empire that had led this woman and her crew to risk everything supporting the Resistance. But those were stories for another time. We've received transmissions from Tacitus, Meredith continued, addressing Talon. The Imperial response is building. They're deploying additional security forces and implementing colony-wide restrictions. Anyone attempting to leave will be subjected to intensive screening. We got out just in time, Talon observed. Where are we headed? Draven asked. The Freehold, Meredith replied. A hidden outpost in the Cygnus sector, beyond Imperial patrol routes, supplied by independent traders and protected by automated defense systems. One of the few truly safe havens for non-humans and their allies. As the Starbreaker prepared for the jump to faster-than-light travel, Draven found a quiet observation deck where he could watch Jar 9 recede into the distance. The planet's toxic atmosphere created swirling patterns of amber and green, beautiful from orbit, lethal on the surface. Nereus joined him there, her presence a comfortable silence beside him. Together, they watched as the world that had been his prison and her battlefield diminished to a distant point of light, then vanished entirely as the ship entered FTL. It's strange, Draven said finally. 24 hours ago, I would have said I knew exactly who I was. Now. He held up his hand, where faint, luminescent patterns still glowed beneath his skin. Physical evidence of a heritage he was only beginning to understand. You are who you have always been, Nereus replied. A man of courage and principle, even when you tried to deny those qualities in yourself. The only difference is that now, you understand why certain things have always come naturally to you. Your affinity for machinery, your intuitive understanding of energy systems, and other things that never made sense before, Draven added. The dreams I've had since childhood, the feeling of something missing, something just beyond my reach. Your Valix heritage calling to you. Nereus nodded. Many mixed-blood individuals experience similar sensations, especially if their abilities remain dormant and unacknowledged. Draven turned to face her directly. Back in the control room, when we were containing the resonance field together, I felt something. A connection that went beyond physical contact. Was that real? Or just my imagination? Nereus's violet eyes met his, unflinching. It was real. Valix can form energy bonds with others of our kind, connections that transcend ordinary interaction. Such bonds are rare and precious, usually forming only after long association or in moments of extreme shared experience. Like containing a deadly resonance field, Draven suggested with a hint of his old wry humor. Precisely, she smiled. Though I admit, the speed and strength of our connection is unusual. Perhaps because your dormant abilities were awakening at that exact moment, creating a unique synchronicity between us. Whatever the explanation, Draven knew that something profound had changed within him, not just the discovery of his heritage or the awakening of abilities, but a fundamental shift in how he viewed himself and his place in the universe. For 15 years, he had existed rather than lived, hiding from truths he hadn't even known were his to claim. What happens now? He asked, the question encompassing far more than their immediate future. Now, Nereus replied, her hand finding his, energy patterns briefly intertwining. We begin. The Starbreaker carried them onward through the void, away from the Empire's reach and toward an uncertain future. Behind them lay Tacitus, a colony in turmoil, where the Empire's plans had been temporarily disrupted but not defeated. Ahead lay the Freehold and the wider resistance, a cause that Draven had never sought, but now embraced as his own. In freeing Nereus from her concrete prison, he had unwittingly freed himself from constraints far more limiting, the fear and isolation that had defined his adult life. Whatever challenges awaited, he would face them not as the solitary mechanic he had been, but as something new, a bridge between worlds, carrying the heritage of both humanity and the Valix within him. As the stars streaked past the observation port, Draven felt, for the first time in years, a sensation he had almost forgotten: hope.